So for this discussion, we will be joined by Andrew KP Lung, China's affairs expert, who is live now from Hong Kong, Ross Feingold, Taiwan political analyst, Rob Shachdev, international affairs expert, Ambassador Suraj Ghul, former diplomat and international affairs expert. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. I would like to go to you first, please, Andrew KP Lung. I want to talk about the implications of this speech, and I want to talk about how people in Taiwan, both political powers there and people domestically, how will they be feeling about seeing this from President Xi Jinping?
Well, I've watched the speech. I hardly consider it a threat because it is actually a statement of goodwill towards the Taiwan people. Because don't forget the reality which has remained with us for a long, long time, and that is the United Nations has long recognized Beijing as the only authority representing the entire Taiwan nation. And that follows Americans' former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger under the instructions of the previous President Nixon to mend ties with Beijing. After that meeting, the United States led the United Nations recognition of Beijing as the only authority representing the entire China. But of course, that the Taiwan question has been left hanging in the air for many decades. But President Xi did make it quite clear that the ideal solution, of course, is peaceful unification. Actually, Beijing has issued serially 3 white papers to that effect. The last white paper was issued at the time of Nancy Pelosi's provocative visit to Taiwan a few years back. But the emphasis still on peaceful unification. Now, of course, that most of the Taiwanese people do not support unification, but neither do they want to declare independence. What they want is to preserve the status quo. But on the other hand, President Xi made it quite clear that the latest time would be 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Of course, President Xi hasn't given up the use of force, but the ideal solution still remains peaceful unification. Now, the question is how peaceful unification is going to be achieved when most Taiwanese people do not really want unification, but they want us to preserve the status quo. The fact remains that the two peoples are increasingly mingled together, both economically and socially. Look, there are over 1 million Taiwanese people actually lived and work on the mainland together with their family members. And many, many Taiwanese young people and businessmen go to the mainland to establish their businesses, the new restaurants, or if you look at the films and TV serials coming from Beijing, you can see that a lot of Taiwanese directors, film stars, they all feature in these films. It says Taiwan, Mr. So-and-so, Taiwan, China, Mr. So-and-so, and Miss So-and-so, Taiwan, China, that kind of thing. And then plus the fact that the two peoples are visiting each other, and then a great deal of contact interaction amongst university professors and students. So I think that the momentum is set in train for the two peoples to gather together. And in fact, Beijing has made it quite clear that anything can be negotiated apart from sovereignty. So I think that the likelihood is Beijing has made it quite clear, in fact, that Beijing would be prepared to offer a formula much more generous than for Hong Kong, for example. So I don't think that the route to peaceful unification has been excluded, and I do not think the President Xi's statement over the New Year
Thank you,
is
Andrew. I just wanted to bring in Ross Feingold for a point. Obviously, on the what people see is this speech from Xi Jinping and this speech from the Taiwanese Prime Minister. It seemed to all be nice rhetoric. Xi Jinping was calling people of Taiwan brothers and family, and they can't sever this friendship. But obviously, all these military exercises of China flexing its muscles near to Taiwan as a sort of threat. What can you tell me about what's going on in that regard?
Most people here in Taiwan ignore Xi Jinping's speech. It's completely irrelevant to their day-to-day lives. Of course, certain government officials, including Taiwan's President Xi, will pay attention. Military national security officials will pay attention for anything different. But there really wasn't anything different, because the threat to use force is still there, and it's something that Taiwanese people are concerned about. Not everyone here in Taiwan thinks that China really would use force, but it's something that I always say that Taiwan people, the military, the government, the business world, they all have to prepare for that eventuality, because China, again, they've not renounced the use of force. But when it comes to people's day-to-day life here, they're not paying attention on a daily basis to what Chinese government officials say, including what Xi Jinping says in an annual speech around New Year's Day. We've seen this before, so there's not really anything different. And I think people here in Taiwan are preparing for a Trump administration that's going to be quite supportive of Taiwan, which introduces another variable into this conversation.
Yeah, of course. What about the recent election of Lai Ching-te? China called him a separatist.
Well, certainly, I'm not surprised China would call him that. In the past, Lai Ching-te has said that he supports Taiwan independence. So his political convictions are no secret. They're quite well known. Of course, during the time that he's president, he's not going to declare independence, because even the United States knows that that would lead to a war between China and Taiwan. And the United States doesn't want Lai Ching-te to do that. So I think it's really unlikely that he would declare independence. But again, we do know what his convictions are. He really would prefer Taiwan to be reconstituted as a country called the Republic of Taiwan, rather than the current name, which is officially still the Republic of China.
And I also just wanted to ask you another question about the importance of the Taiwan and US relationship. And obviously now you mentioned Donald Trump's coming in. This is a important thing for the people of Taiwan.
Well, I think the issue here is, or the thing to watch for, is Trump's team, his national security and foreign policy team. People like Michael Waltz, the incoming national security advisor, or Marco Rubio, the incoming Secretary of State. These are people who in the past have been very tough towards China, and they've been very big supporters of Taiwan. Will that embolden Taiwan to do something that causes a war with China? Probably not. But will Taiwan be given more space to proclaim that it is separate from China? I think so. I think we're going to see a lot of support from the Trump administration. Then ultimately, it's going to be up to the leadership here in Taiwan whether they want to take the risks that following along with what the Trump administration wants them to do is worth the effort, is worth the risk. Because every time Taiwan takes a step towards declaring it separate from China, China does react. And that's something that people here in Taiwan need to take very seriously. Even if it's just a military exercise from China, it puts a tremendous amount of costs and pressure on Taiwan's military. So one thing to watch as we go into 2025 with the new Trump administration is they're going to give a lot of latitude towards Taiwan, but is Taiwan going to take that, or is Taiwan going to be more conservative?
Thank you very much. For my next question, I wanted to move to Robinder Sachdev. I wanted to ask you, how might Taiwan's democratic system challenge communist China's long-term goal of reunification under its one China policy?
Thank you so much. I mean, I will take the liberty of looking at a bigger picture and then coming to your point. I would start with, Andrew, you mentioned that 2049 as 100 years of the Communist Party. I'll work backwards with respect to dates. From what I understand, China has decided, wants to, by 2049, have quote unquote, whatever it means, integration, unification with Taiwan. So that's one date line, 2049. I will then move that forward to Xi Jinping has often said that the issue of Taiwan should not be left to our future generations to resolve. It's the duty of our generation to resolve this matter. Now, Xi Jinping, whatever his age, so let's say his generation has maybe another 10 years of good, influential time, him and his advisors. So that would mean that in the next 10 years, Xi Jinping, when he and his era of leaders passes away, they want to manage or, resolve the situation. That's what he has said. Now, so that's the second, date line I would look at. The third date line which I would look at with respect to Taiwan is, I would think, a number which has come around very often, and I do think there's some sense to it, the year 2027. China has a window of opportunity. See, China was moving. Reunification could be peaceful, could be forceful, we do not know. But with regards to forceful military sense, China has a window of opportunity in the next 4-5 years. America in the last 3-4 years overall, be it Biden, Trump, whoever, have started ramping up their defense and military preparedness in the Asia-Pacific region, increasing the number of bases, their distributed marine strategy, etc. And here China is ramping up. Now, America suddenly realized about 3-4 years ago that it has been, lagging in its preparation. So America is now rapidly ramping up. So there would come a time, I think, in the next 3 to 4
I'm really, really, really sorry to interrupt you. We will come back to you. It's just we're about to lose Ross Feingold. I just want to ask you one more question, Ross. I was wondering, what are China's broader ambitions in South Asia?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because we tend to think of the People's Republic of China since its establishment in 1949, other than its near abroad, places like Tibet or Xinjiang. It hasn't really looked to exercise authority or project power far away from China. But that has changed in recent years as China has grown economically, as its military has improved itself in its systems, its weapon systems, its personnel. So now we think of China as just another world power. So when it comes to this part of the world, there's a lot of discussion about what is China's goals in the Pacific. Is China looking to project its power beyond the first island chain, beyond Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines, out into the Pacific Islands? That's why there's so much competition for influence with the Pacific Island countries between the United States and Australia on one hand and China on the other. We also see China projecting its power in the South China Sea with its expansive sovereignty claims, which the other claimants are really in too weak a position to dispute. And then we even see China projecting its power as far away as Africa. It has a base in Djibouti. There's been talk about a base in Western Africa as well. China's been exercising more foreign policy influence in the Middle East, most notably about 2 years ago when it brought Saudi Arabia and Iran back together. It's also hosted the Palestinian factions last year to reach a unity agreement. So it's certainly the case that China is projecting its power further and further away from China. And again, that's not a surprise given China's economic and military power, that they would seek to project its power in more broader than just in the areas near to China alone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. Next, I want to come on to Ambassador Suresh Goel. I want to ask you, these drills, these military drills, what can be their danger and what is the significance of them? They've happened 3 times. Sorry, continue.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and good evening to you. Let me speak on the basis of my own experience. I've served in China. I speak Chinese language. I was in the Indian embassy in Beijing for 4 years. And let me come back to the basic 3 or 4 points in a bulleted kind of fashion. Number 1, it is the sacrosanct principle for China that reunification or reintegration or whatever you want to call it will take place. It is an article of faith in the objectives of the CCP. And please do understand that for the governance in China, political governance, what the CCP objectives are the final truth. they're like 10 commandments. Nobody can go against them. So if 2049 is the ultimate year, by which time the reintegration must take place, China will make every effort to do so, point number one. Point number two, even Taiwan has taken a decision to become independent only around a decade ago or so. Even before that, when Taiwan was a member of the Security Council, because the USA wanted Taiwan there, Taiwan's principle also was there is only one China. It's only the difference is whether it is the Republic of China or Taipei or Beijing, which actually represents China. Eventually, they had to give up. And they now want independence. China will never, ever recognize it. Number three, if Taiwan can become an independent country and the UN can recognize it, but China is the Security Council member, China would never agree to it. They will veto it. So now we come to what are the options. Taiwan will have to live with China challenging Taiwan's decision to become independent. Can the USA support it? I doubt it very much. The USA will go to the extent, whether it is Trump or Biden, I don't think they have ever gone to the extent of questioning reunification of China. They're only delaying it. Even Biden didn't go against it. And therefore, it's only a matter of time that we need to see what happens. Either China changes its policy, mainland China, or Taiwan changes the policy. I don't see anything of that kind happening. So what I see is continued conflagration for many more decades to come, at least till 2050. Either the USA will have to up the ante or China will have to withdraw. Till that time, the situation is going to be confrontation.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting stuff. Can I talk to you? I want to go back to basics here. And I wanted to go to Andrew KP Lung and ask, why is Taiwan so significant to the Chinese?
Well, it's a kind of nationalism because China suffered a long period of foreign aggression. And don't forget about the partitioning of China during the late parts of the Qing dynasty by the eight great powers of Europe and also Japan and other countries. And then it becomes a national scourge, as it were, on the psyche of the Chinese people. So I think there is a great consensus among the 1.4 billion Chinese people that Taiwan should return to the fold of the motherland. And if you look at history, Taiwan had always been part of China, dating back to the Ming Dynasty. The Ming Dynasty had the general there, Jingping, who established the administration there. So I think that there is a lot of historical and cultural and also nationalistic kind of sentiments behind it. And then you would look at the two people, their cultures are essentially the same language, the same kind of Confucius kind of tradition. And as I said at the beginning, the two peoples are increasingly much closer together. Every day when I watch the TV channels and dramas and all sorts of conferences, seminars, the two peoples are getting closer and closer together. As a Chinese, I don't see why we should spill blood amongst ourselves. And in fact, a lot of the Taiwanese people have been living on the mainland, they're traveling on the mainland, and likewise. And of course, it was a different regime, but then at the end of the day, that's not the end of the world. The difference is not that great. And in fact, that as far as the preservation of the lifestyle is concerned, everything can be negotiated. And a much more generous formula could be put on the table. And that's what President Xi and his senior leaders have made it quite clear. The peaceful unification is of course, the ideal solution. But of course, all these military exercises are there to deter separatist sentiments, especially after the election of a independence leader in Taiwan. Um, and of course, as a reaction towards American arming Taiwan to the teeth and turning Taiwan into the kind of porcupine, as it were. But at the end of the day, the military solution is no solution. I mean, no Chinese would like to the Chinese people fighting each other. So I think that there is a lot of misreading that somehow Beijing is trying to seize an opportunity and try to invade Taiwan. No, that's not the solution at all. You know, why do something spilling blood amongst the brothers of the same country when the whole thing is going to happen or can be allowed to happen peacefully? So it doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
And I think that I'm very sad about this rhetoric and twisted rhetoric in the West, as if Beijing wants to seize every opportunity to invade Taiwan. This is complete misreading of Beijing's thinking on this issue.
Thank you very much. Robinder Satchev, I want to bring you in here. Andrew was talking about how this has been he was being very positive about the whole thing, but I want to talk about if this does end up escalating into something violent to a point, how much further do you think this could escalate, and what is China's military capabilities that they have?
A couple of points. To Andrew's point, I understand, but my question would be, there's an inherent contradiction. If Taiwan does not want a peaceful reconciliation, reintegration with China, what will China do by 2049? That is the question, and that's the challenge. What Andrew is saying, and that perspective of China, one understands. But the chances, the probability that that Taiwan will go along with a generous formula which China gives, we do not know. It could happen and all. But the question, I think, which is out there, front and center, is that if Taiwan does not agree to any formula of peaceful, some integration with China, what will China do? So therefore, at that point of time, the essence is, it seems that there will be a military conflict. Now, if there is a military conflict, when could that happen? It could happen anytime. My take or my understanding from what I've been reading, analyzing, and of course my own take is that China has a window of opportunity for a military option in the next 3 to 4 years. After the 3 to 4 years, America has been investing so much in its military capabilities in the Asia Pacific that sure, I mean, China and America can fight it out, whatever, etc. But it will be a very, very, very bloody war. Even in the next 3 to 4 years, if some conflict were to happen, it will be a bloody war. But China could manage, in some senses, to equate with America. Down the line, if America keeps investing the way it is and ramping up, it will be a much larger calculus for China to take. So therefore, the window, it seems, when China could take the military option, if not military and economic blockade or whichever way, would be in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, coming to the issue of Trump, by the way, that's a real wild card in this whole matrix. Trump has his, perspective that America will not go into wars for other nations. Yeah, Trump will not. And in fact, there's a school of thought in America amongst the MAGA Republicans, Trump supporters, who say that Trump is not a warrior. Trump is a negotiator. What they're warning is that Trump will, end of the day, go and try and make a deal with China and negotiate something. Trump will not go to war with China, a military war. That's a school of thought within the Republicans I'm putting out there. So as to what happens, we don't know. I mean, there's a contradiction out there. China says and assumes and pushes for and talks diplomatically for a, peaceful integration, reintegration, joining of the two cultures. We appreciate cultures and people coming together. Absolutely. But the question is, if it cannot happen, forget 2049. Xi Jinping has said that it's the duty of our generation, like Ambassador Goel is saying, the CCP is like the gospel there, right? Supposing. So if Xi Jinping and his coterie and his leadership says that it's the duty of our generation not to leave the Taiwan question to the next generation. How much is Xi Jinping's lifespan additional? by the grace of God, I don't know, let's say 10 years effective leadership. So the leadership of Xi and his cohort, Xi is not one person. Xi is a collective thought, right? So that means China's leadership, the present one, they are looking at a time frame of the next 10 odd years before they start popping and passing away. They have to solve, quote unquote, in their own perspective, the Taiwan question before that. Solving the question in the next 10 years, peaceful integration, irrespective of whichever political party is in Taiwan, leading or not leading is a different matter. Could that happen? If that doesn't happen, what will the leadership of China do? That is the question. And what will be the calculus they will look at, that to what extent could the US come in support of Taiwan? Sure,
Yes.
the US is arming up Taiwan to per the porcupine strategy. We understand that. You know, missiles, everything, so that invading Taiwan will be like you're going through a porcupine. So that is already happening. So there's a window of opportunity, in my sense, military sense, for China before American dominance in this whole theater becomes more, let's say, dominating, versus where China, by the way, is now right now leading in that dominance. China is pumping out warships and navy is at a speed which the US cannot even imagine. US is suddenly
I
realizing.
wanted to, apologies for butting in, I wanted to move to Suresh Goel in the next question. Obviously, Trump and Xi Jinping are known to be not too friendly. So Xi Jinping has actually been invited to an inauguration. How can we reflect this to this discussion and this future that the US and China may have?
You know, that's a $1 million question, really. Taiwan, the whole Western Pacific, does represent the outpost of the American security matrix in East to South China Sea, really speaking. Now, in that sense, if Trump does decide that military action is advisable to be able to defend that American security matrix, he probably will have to go to defend Taiwan, which is actually a code what was saying to thwart the Chinese attack. My sense is that America will not do it. America may go to the extent of tariff war, everything, but I don't think Trump has an appetite for engaging in any other war, whether it is Europe or Southeast Asia or Pacific, anywhere at all. So let us leave it there and let us see how it plays out. My only hope is that eventually China will see the sense of not engaging in bloodshed. Hopefully, there will be a peaceful solution to this thing. But most of the countries in the world recognize that Taiwan and China are part of the same country.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. That has been a fascinating conversation about a fascinating topic.